Hey everybody, I'm Chef Tom.
And I'm Chef Britt with allthingsbbq.com, and today we're making pumpkin cheesecake bars.
Well, today Chef Britt and I are going to divvy up the duties on our pumpkin cheesecake bars.
Yeah, I'm gonna do a graham cracker crust alongside a cheesecake batter.
And I'm gonna be handling the pumpkin pie as well as the bourbon butterscotch sauce. But the first thing we gotta do is break down this pumpkin and get it on the smoker. Also, we dressed alike and we didn't plan it.
I think you look great.
I do look great. All right, so first thing we're gonna do is split this pumpkin right in half. Carefully. Perfect. And then we gotta get all of the yucky stuff out of the center. I feel like the easiest way to get this done is either with a food scoop or an ice cream scoop, but any old spoon will work. We just want to get all of that stringy stuff and all of the seeds out of there. So now that we've got these things cleaned up, they're just going to go straight onto the smoker. Today we're cooking on the Yoder Smoker's YS640S. We're burning cherry pellets. Now currently we've got it set to 350 degrees to roast these pumpkins. So I'm just going to place these cut side down on the top shelf, and we'll let them roast until they're tender.
All right, so while the pumpkin is roasting, I'm gonna go ahead and make a graham cracker crust. It's just gonna be really easy with sugar, melted butter, and graham crackers. Let's hop in. All right, so we're gonna use about 3 packages of graham crackers, which is also about 1 box. We're gonna grind them down. Let's get them all packed in there. Get it grinding. We'll just pulse a few times to get it started, and we'll grind it down. Just gonna make sure they're all ground down. I've got some bigger pieces, so I'll keep going. Okay, great. Let's add the melted butter and sugar in there. Get all that sugar in there. And I'm gonna stream in the butter while it's going on low speed. All right, so once that's hydrated from the butter, we'll just press it into our sheet pan. Just gonna make sure all those dry spots are hydrated, and then spread it out evenly as best you can before I start really pressing it into the pan. Now, you don't necessarily have to add the sugar into this crust, but it really makes for a nice texture in the end, so that's why we kept it in here. And it'll get those nice butterscotch flavors once the sugars start to caramelize. We'll make sure we don't have any cracks or creases. Okay, from here, I'm gonna transfer this into the fridge to let it set up, and then we're gonna get our cheesecake batter started. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is just get some cream cheese in here. I'm using about 2.5 small packages. And I'm gonna go ahead and get the sugar all in there. So I'm gonna just set this up in here with the paddle attachment and get it creaming, which is a technical baking term. So I'm just gonna start this on low speed, maybe even a medium-low speed. And once all that sugar dissolves, then we'll be ready to add the rest of our ingredients. If your cream cheese is a little cold, feel free to use a torch. The trick here is just to keep the torch moving and not find a hot spot. It's pretty cold out here today, so my cream cheese needs a little help. All right, and it's important to scrape frequently while you're making this cheesecake batter, so that way you don't find any hard lumps of cream cheese at the end of your mix here. Little paddle here, and then we'll mix it up a few more times and start adding our eggs. feel free to kick up the speed early on, but once we start adding our eggs, we're gonna have to slow down a little bit. Okay, so I'm gonna add 1 egg at a time. I'm gonna go slow. If I increase the speed too much, I'll get too much air in my batter and it'll kind of get too much volume in the end and we won't be able to fit our pumpkin pie filling on top. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and scrape before I add the next egg. Lots of scraping here, guys. Alrighty, like I said, you're doing a lot of scraping here. And we just want to make sure that we're not seeing any lumps of anything before we move on to the last few ingredients. It's nice and velvety. We're ready for the next part, which is, I think, the best part of this cheesecake batter, which is sour cream, and a lot of it. It's about 1 pound for this recipe. All right, so once that's blended in, we're gonna add a little flavor. Normally we would do maybe some vanilla extract, but we're gonna do a splash of bourbon. Look at that. It's really smooth. It's definitely a wetter cheesecake batter, but this is gonna be all the creaminess that we need for our delicious bars. All right, so I'm just gonna cover this and keep it in the fridge until we're ready for the next step.
All right, guys, these pumpkins starting to feel pretty tender here. I've got my skewer and I've just been checking. As we pierce the flesh, there should be very little resistance. That's where we're at. It's been probably 90 minutes now since we actually threw this on. At this point, we're ready to go ahead and get the skin off of it, process this flesh so it's pureed down, and then we'll be ready to make our pumpkin pie filling. So you can kind of just peel away at the skin at this point. Should come off fairly easily. And then this flesh that's left behind, we're gonna chunk that up and put it into the food processor. That's what we're gonna be working with for our pie. All right, let's start off with a little pulse. And then hit it on high. We'll work those big chunks back down to the bottom. So I'm just gonna continue scraping down the sides and pureeing this until it's nice and smooth. All right, this stuff is looking pretty good, so we're gonna go ahead and scale out what we need for our recipe today. I'm looking for 20 ounces of pumpkin puree today. Hey Britt, what's that in grams?
You know, it's like 568.
Brilliant.
Roughly.
20 ounces is the number for our pumpkin pie filling, but you may have a little bit more than that if you're doing a big pumpkin. You can save that back for a soup or maybe that pumpkin butter recipe from a few videos back. But I found that if you're looking for a yield about 20 ounces, which is 1 pound and 4 ounces, roughly a 3-pound pumpkin will be the right size. Now for the rest of the ingredients. We're gonna start with a 1/2 cup of brown sugar and a tablespoon of pumpkin pie spice. And we'll get this stuff incorporated before we start adding some of the liquids. Well, it already smells like pumpkin pie thanks to that pumpkin pie spice. Starting to see everything get incorporated well, so we're gonna keep going with our ingredients. We've got a 1/2 cup of maple syrup and a tablespoon of bourbon. Next, we're gonna add 3 whole eggs. These will incorporate a lot easier if they're already beaten lightly before they go in. Easy stuff. Now our last ingredient for the pumpkin pie filling is 1 cup of heavy cream. All right, so everything's incorporated, and here's an optional step that might improve your pumpkin pie. You can blitz this down to smooth things out with an immersion blender. So we've got crust, cheesecake, and now pumpkin pie all ready to go. Britt's gonna go grab the pan and we'll put it all together.
I've waited all my life for this moment. We'll just add it on in there. Okay, and then I'm just gonna spread it out. Using my little spatula here, I'm gonna just push it all into the corners. I'm gonna try and even it out as best we can. And you can actually, this is so liquidy, you can kind of just shake it out evenly. Ready for you, Tom.
All right, and then we're gently gonna come across the top with the pumpkin filling. And if we're keeping this in layers rather than swirling, then we're gently just gonna spread the pumpkin across the top of the cheesecake. Either way, it's gonna taste great, so don't worry if you dumped it all in here and it mixes together. All right, guys, we're staying at 350 for the bake here.
I'm gonna go ahead and just set it away from that heat source and just keep it indirect that way.
Sounds good. All right, guys, well, it's been about an hour and a half now, and you can see that we still have a little bit of jiggle left in here. But if we take our thermometer and temp it right at the top here, we should be getting around 180. 175, 180, that's gonna be perfect. Pull this off. So this is gonna come off now and go into the fridge to chill down. We want it to be fully chilled before we slice into it to serve it. In the meantime, I'm gonna put together our bourbon butterscotch sauce. So we're gonna start with 1/2 cup of light corn syrup in our skillet over medium heat. And this inverted sugar will help to keep from any crystals being formed as we caramelize our brown sugar for our butterscotch. So 1 cup of brown sugar on there. And we're going to just let this sort of sit, let the heat come up, should start bubbling pretty well, and we'll let this sugar cook away for just a few minutes. I'm not gonna try to agitate this too much, but I will move it around a little bit to make sure that all of the sugar is cooking evenly. Now, butterscotch is a little bit trickier than caramel because of the brown sugar. It's hard to tell when it's really caramelizing and getting that dark color. So you gotta rely on your nose a little bit. You wanna make sure that you don't smell anything scorching. We're definitely getting a bit of a caramelized flavor coming off of here. I'm gonna bring the heat down a bit because this is bubbling just a little bit more aggressive than I like. All right, our brown sugar's really smoothed out now, so we're gonna go ahead and add our heavy cream. We'll be whisking while we're doing this so that it doesn't seize up. Just a little bit more heat. Back to about medium low now. And then once I've got that cream worked in there, I'm also going to add a tablespoon of bourbon. So we've had this nice slow bubble going on here. We're thickening this up just a little bit. I don't want to go too far though because it's going to be a little while before we slice into our bars. So for now, I'm going to turn the heat off. We can always reduce this more later. Sprinkle in a teaspoon of our whiskey barrel smoked salt. I'll let that dissolve. You can see how loose this is now. It's very hot, but it's still a bit loose, which is fine because it'll set up as it cools. We're also going to add 3 tablespoons of butter. And if I'm serving this pretty immediately, I'll just leave it on the stovetop. But you can actually cool it all the way and warm it back up if you need to. Although I think the most ideal way to handle this is just to make this sauce right before you're ready to serve your cheesecake bars. So I'm gonna get the butter melted all the way into this and we'll set it aside until our bars are chilled and we're ready to serve them. Well, our pumpkin cheesecake bars have chilled down now. We brought the butterscotch sauce back up so it was warm. I really just warmed it until those bubbles got nice and big and told me that it had reduced to a thick consistency. something that can coat the back of a spoon. So at this point, I'm gonna turn it over to Britt. She's gonna slice up our bars, go grab some forks, and we'll finish it all off.
Sounds good. Cheers.
It's great every time. We've done this at several dinners, so we knew it would be fantastic. This is such a great fall dessert. I mean, pumpkin spice might seem basic, but it is delicious. And that crust is fantastic. That extra sugar in there.
Yeah, it really gives it the texture that it needs. The warm butterscotch is really playing well with the cool cream cheese.
Great contrast.
I'm digging it.
Me too. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to check out allthingsbbq.com for all of the products featured in today's video. If you have any questions or comments, or there's anything you'd like to see us cook, let me know in the comment section down below, and let's be good to one another.
For more recipes, tips, and techniques, head on over to allthingsbbq.com/thesauce. All things barbecue, where barbecue legends
Are made. That's my line.
That's your line. All things barbecue, where barbecue legends are made.